how do you see the market today? I mean, the market in general is really very hot. Is it a little too explosive, right?
It's definitely more challenging to make loans into the market today. You can have the foresight to know that you can make good loans in bad times and actually do it, but you can't do it if you don't have a balance sheet that allows you to do it. So I think we had both. We understood, we had a great balance sheet. We were one of only 2 banks in the top 100 that didn't cut its dividend, let alone have a money-losing quarter. So while everyone else was raising capital, issuing stock, we were making loans, and that's why the Steve Witkoffs of the world bank with us. We're not always we don't promise, we don't try, we don't aim to be the least expensive on every deal in the best times. We aim to be very consistent, and we aim to be execution focused. So, but to your question, in 2009, Steve actually took a run at building 150 Charles Street, and we were willing to finance 150 Charles Street in 2009, and he decided to hold back, but he had the option, and that's an amazing thing. In 2009, today we look at our book, we finance probably 17, 18 sizable residential development projects in New York City between 2009 and 2013, probably $600-700 million worth of condo development projects. That's our piece that we held. When we look at the quality of those loans from an equity standpoint, from a return standpoint, from how much recourse structurally, and from the fact that the market took off and rendered our loan to values about 30% today on that book, our loan values based on the sellouts, and we have several 100% in contracts relative to our aggregate exposures, and we're getting paid better than ever.
So here's the question. How could you make a loan to McMillan? Okay, how do you make a loan to this guy? I'm only joking about it, but Joe McMillan comes into the market. Why? Let's talk. We'll play it on both sides. Joe, how do you come into the market? How do you decide to become a developer? And then how do you find Peter Darcy?
Do you want the long answer or the short answer?
I'll take both.
Right.
And I'll cut it down.
Short answer is, when I was a little kid, I always loved walking stick-built houses and loved drawing buildings and stuff like that. Ended up on Wall Street. Spent my career hedge fund, private equity, investment banking. Was doing real estate on the side with a partner. Partner and I formed a company with a couple other people. Went into business. And from the start, we had deep operational expertise in-house. Started acquiring sites and good relationships. And Peter's been a very important relationship to us. We are closing our 5th loan with him in the next week, and 5th loan in the last 24 to 30 months, let's say.
Let's talk about the type of developments that you've done, because as I joked with you before, yesterday I was in the meatpacking district, and there's this really beautiful building that you just completed off 9th Avenue and 14th Street, and now you have the toy, as we joked, the Tootsie Roll building and a couple of other things. Talk to me about development, how hard it is to develop, and you've really been developing more of the higher price product, similar to 140 Charles, and so on.
Yeah, I mean, developing is a challenging business, and I think that a lot of people, they underestimate that the challenge. It's not as simple as just finding a site and slapping up a building. There's a lot of coordination, obviously. You got to have good equity partners, got to have a good balance sheet, have a good lender relationship, and you have to execute correctly, because just building a building isn't going to make you a good developer. You have to do something that the market responds to, and you got to be on time, on budget. Buyers got to like it. And I think right now there's a lot of activity obviously going on in Manhattan, and I think some of it will be successful, some of it not. And I think that the really successful developers will be those who differentiate their product and are building.
How much equity do you need to go to a Peter Darcy or to another lender today to go on the ground to build the development?
Percentage-wise, we have put in as much as 52% equity into a deal. And as little as 20. So, we've had loans between 50 and 80%. I'd say the average is probably around 65%.
Now let's go to the other side of the coin. My buddy, it was a good game last Saturday. Even though they lost only by a point, Ohio State-Michigan game. Well, Let's talk about the hospitality industry. Sure. I mean, let's talk about the entire spectrum and the wonderful new Jade Hotel that's on 13th Street in the Village.
So, my company has 9 hotels. 8 are in the city. 1 is in Boston. We have a new concept called the Jade Hotel. It's on 13th Street between 5th and 6th. We closed on that site in January of 2008, thinking that we were going to start construction within the next 6 months. We had to sidestep the financial crisis, and then in mid-2010, M&T made us a construction loan. It allowed us to get out of the ground, get going, and then we completed the project in January of this year. From the very start, the Jade Hotel was designed to really be part of the neighborhood, part of the Greenwich Village fabric. I remember walking around with our designers and our architects and telling them that I really wanted it to reflect the charm, the history, sort of the magic of Greenwich Village. And I think we really delivered on that. And the hotel has done incredibly well. We're getting rates that, frankly, far exceed our expectations when we were putting together our pro forma just prior to construction, and occupancy is averaging near 90%.
And what's your thoughts about the New York City hospitality over the next 10 years? Because you are building the Jade Bryant Park, and you're looking at other locations, and then we'll talk about the guys who really went into Brooklyn and built the first hotel in 40 years, Jason.
Sure. So I think that the hotel market's going to continue to evolve in New York dramatically. My view is that there's going to be a lot less emphasis on the major hotel brands. I think that is leaving room that is directly addressing the consumer demand for more interesting, independent, and boutique concepts throughout the city. No doubt there will always be a place for the large branded hotels, the Marriotts, the Hiltons, etc. But for the smaller hotels, I think the select service, the branded select service hotels, I think that's been fully played out over the last 10 years or so. So I think going forward, the really exciting opportunity for New York hotel, both owners and users, are these smaller independent boutique hotels.
Jason, let's talk about the Marriott Brooklyn Bridge.
Right. Well, I totally agree that there's certainly a place for the larger brand hotels in addition to all the things that are happening. The Marriott in Brooklyn serves as an anchor hotel to all the different hotels that are being built around it. And in a sense, we were nervous, 2-3 years ago, seeing all the hotels that were coming into the pipeline. But all of those worries were unfounded. As a matter of fact, the more hotels that have been added to Brooklyn, the more it's seen both nationally and internationally as a destination in and of itself. And it's become less Manhattan-oriented. The business we're doing there over the years become more of a mix between Brooklyn and Manhattan, and not just leisure, but business travelers. So I think that there's only really a few brands that are like Marriott, and it's going to be very difficult for another brand to be created like that because of people, like on this panel who are creating hotels. Will's creating a hotel, 8, 9 hotels. There are a lot of people like him creating their own distinct brands because they can build that kind of relationship with their clients. But then there's always going to be the people who just want to have consistency and know, if they travel anywhere in the world, they're going to be in a Marriott, and the standards that Marriott has are, to a lot of people, very comforting to know. If you go to Turkey or Brazil or wherever you're going to go, there are certain standards. So I think there's a place for both of them, absolutely.
Scott, you've repositioned properties. Many of the buildings that in your portfolio at one time were what we'd call cutting rooms, schmata places, okay? And, I walked in there on an inspection with Jonathan about a month and a half ago, and I wasn't impressed. I was totally blown away for the change of these buildings, these mid-blocks properties, which no one would ever think would be there. Talk to me about the resurrection of let's say, the former garment apparel section to now being the Times Square East, okay, and what's going on in your thoughts of Midtown West over there?
Sure. It's a gigantic metamorphosis. I mean, I started 35 years ago working at 229 West 36th Street and then to 528th Avenue. These are buildings in the vicinity of the properties we own now, and this was a tough area to begin with, and the tenancy was almost singularly garment and fashion related. Now it's an incredibly vibrant neighborhood. You and I toured a building a few weeks ago on a loan opportunity that is a 170,000-foot building on a street that I had the Wall Street Journal pitched an article to them 3 years ago, and they wrote it about what's gone on this one block on 39th Street between 8th and 9th Avenue, which 10 years ago was a tough block full of factory buildings and tons of vacancies, and now has 7 hotels on the north side of the block, including a large Starwood brand between 8th and 9th, 7 hotels. And our building, which is virtually 100% occupied by small tech business, artists, other small businesses. And in fact, we had a ground floor retail space, 8,000 or 9,000 feet, that we sort of warehoused for many years, seeing what was going on the street. People were making offers to put distribution centers or UPS depots, and for very little rent. And we held out and waited for most of this to happen, and then we ended up leasing to a 9,000-foot restaurant, a real good restaurant.
You forgot the candy.
Yeah.
Boutique candy.
Yes, and a chocolatier from downtown. And we ended up being able to lease him this building based not just what's going on upstairs, but more what was going on the block with the hotels. We pointed out there were X amount of hotel rooms on the block, out of 1,500, 1,800 on one side of the block, and that was sort of nirvana. So all of it sort of moves from there. In our other properties on side streets and even in the vicinity, we've seen this sort of gentle change over from garment and fashion to professional offices, non-for-profits, and we're very happy to do. My background is in garment and retail, and we'd love to sign garment and retail tenants up. Those aren't the folks that are responding to the ads per se.
Now, it's interesting, and then I'll relate to Melissa. One of the buildings that you own and you financed with an insurance company. I mean, you've had the opportunity. The insurance company, who many times would have not said, "I want the small tenancy and this type of thing," and not credit tenants, but I think it was the principal who did it out of Des Moines, Iowa. They were very interested in that.
Yeah, and they were terrific, and they didn't want to shake us down for our checking accounts and banking accounts. They said, "We don't have a bank, so you don't have to worry about giving us your security."
But it's good if you would be banking with M&T. No question.
No, I'm kidding. They were terrific. I don't think they would have looked at this building 5 years ago. I think they would have never looked at this building, and our friends at Meridian convinced them about the virtues of the property. And I think one meeting in, not only did they look at it, they were enticed and wanted to make the loan, and we efficiently made a substantial loan on the property, and everyone sort of got an education along the way about what had happened in this industry, because when you're talking to folks like that, and they're out in Des Moines, and they're big, large, sophisticated guys, but they're not neighborhood-centric, and they come and they sort of learn some things based on this loan, it opened a lot of eyes about what's going on in the vicinity. These aren't just, loft buildings anymore.
So what do you, Melissa, that's the perfect tie-in to you. So here's a building. These are 80-year-old buildings, 75-year-old buildings, which have been repositioned. What is the Prudential looking to do in the metropolitan area, because you handle the whole Northeast region? Are you looking for the smaller buildings? Because people might have this perception that you only want to do, the Cross Island Shopping Center, or you did the large apartment buildings on the west side over there. What does Prudential like to do, and where do they see the next couple of years going?
Sure. Well, I'd like to just say, my friend Peter here, we don't do land loans and we don't do construction loans. So that we leave that for the banks. We're really more of a long-term lender, and the trends we're seeing today are people looking for 10, 12, 15, 20-year, term money, because they like where interest rates are. So we will look at construction loans, but really it's more on apartments, and it's 65% of cost. But won't look at the land, won't look at condominiums, because we are longer term. So I just want to get that out there where Prudential is. In terms of, I think we see, very bullish on the New York market and willing to kind of go to some of the areas that are a little off the beaten path in terms of people always thinking, well, you only want to, lend in Midtown, or you only want to do, apartment buildings in certain locations. But I think we're seeing the city, the same light as what many people are saying. There's a lot of opportunity out there. In terms of size of loans, I think people think of us as the big behemoth, and we do the $200 and $300 million loans. But really, we do a lot of, $15, $20, $25 million loans as well.
Now, one time Prudential was a major hotel lender, even owner of properties. How do you look at the hospitality business today?
We do. I think for hospitality, we're really focused on the primary markets, of course, which Manhattan is one of them, and probably one of the best, if not the best, hotel market there is. So we are looking for hotel opportunities right now. We think it's a right time to get in and looking for. Right now, we're really focused on the flags, but we have recently.
The Jade is a very nice little flag.
I think it is. I think I'd love to stay there. But I think recently too, we've gotten a participating in a floating rate loan on a hotel that doesn't have a flag. So I think we are kind of opening things up in terms of looking at a broader spectrum.